Hi there, Steve here. Today I want to talk about getting started in a new language. I think when we start in a new language, we're starting from very often zero knowledge. In my case, I'm going to refer to Farsi, which has been my latest sort of new language, but it's an experience obviously that I've had with many languages. Farsi is particularly difficult for a few reasons that I'll explain, but the process is the same, and if anything, my approach to new languages is becoming refined. So, Farsi is difficult because it's written in the Arabic alphabet, and while I have now gotten somewhat used to the Arabic alphabet in learning Arabic, it's still difficult. It's always easiest to learn in your own alphabet. Second of all, on link or whatever we use for text to speech, it's not available for Farsi. So I can't click on a word and hear it. That's a bit of a problem. So how do and third of all, I would say I haven't given up on Arabic. I am continuing to work on my Arabic, and I'm kind of dividing my time depending on my mood of the day between Arabic and Farsi. When I find the Farsi too difficult, I go back to Arabic, and of course it's much easier and I feel good about myself. When I need a bit of a challenge, I go back to Farsi. Why am I learning Farsi? Because there's far more opportunity to use Farsi here in West Vancouver, North Vancouver. My doctor is from Iran, storekeepers from Iran, lots of people from Iran, not so many people from Arabic countries. And of course, when you get into a language, you start reading about that country. So I'm reading about the Persian Empire, 500 BC, Darius, Cyrus, Xerxes, or however it's pronounced, and all that kind of stuff. Battle of Marathon and so forth. So now, what do I do? Okay, first of all, I have found over the years as I get into new languages that it's very good to start with almost low intermediate content, not to start with absolutely simple content. And therefore, to go at these more or less intermediate type content, low intermediate type content with a lot of repetition. So what I do with Farsi is, because at Link we can view the whole text, or we can go sentence by sentence. So I have started a new sort of process, which I think is quite good. So you'll see that I'm working with the mini stories, and I'm going to give you a series of screenshots here. I tried to record myself using it on the website and off my iPad, and I really couldn't make it work in any satisfactory way. So I'm going to use a few screenshots. If I get better at recording, myself using it, I will do so if there's interest. So I'm working with a mini stories series. I've gone through sort of the first 10 saving words and phrases, listening to it, and more words that I start to pick up. I've heard them many times. But so if I go to a new lesson, let's say lesson 13 here, where I have some words that I have already encountered before, which are in yellow, and then a number of new words that are in blue. One thing that I've found very useful to do is to listen to the lesson while reading the English translation. Now, in the case of the mini stories, in the case of Who is She, some of the content that we have in Farsi, the English translation, in fact, the translation into a number of languages is available. So I can listen and I get sort of the gist of what it is about. In fact, because I've done these many stories in Greek and in Arabic and in Slovak and so forth, I'm familiar with the stories. And, if we talk about compelling input, when we're starting in a language, trying to decipher the language, get the hang of words and phrases is quite compelling. So I find that if I can deal with content that's familiar, because the more familiar the content is, the better you can understand it, even if you don't have the words. So if I have familiar content and I'm motivated to try to get the hang of the language, this actually helps me. So listening to the Farsi while reading the English starts to make the content even more familiar. So once I finish doing that, then I go back and I go into sentence mode. and I listen to the sentence. And because I don't have text to speech, I can't click on each word. So therefore I listen to the sentence and I can go back 5 seconds and listen to it again. So I start to get the hang of how these words are pronounced. So once I've really dissected one sentence, then I go to our activities where I can go through the words that I have saved in whatever it might be, multiple choice or just a flashcard, reverse flashcard, review them, and then I go to the next sentence. And here again, I listen to the sentence, I save any words that I need, I listen to it again using the 5-second back to really get the hang of this, and then I go through the words and phrases in the activities. So in this way, I'm sort of working my through. Now that doesn't mean that when I finish, and don't forget that in the mini stories, the vocabulary repeats. So it's the same story essentially twice with a different person or a different tense, and then a bunch of questions that reuse the same vocabulary. And I find when I'm listening and not able to read, that the questions are really the easiest to understand because there's so much repetition. So once I go through these, now I've done 10, which I listen to in my car or wherever, more or less getting, it's just becoming gradually clearer and clearer. So this is how I start into a new language. I've been at it for 2 weeks. I don't start with, how are you, hola, you learn some of the basic greetings, but to get further into the language, I find this kind of sort of semi-intermediate content with a lot of repetition and using some of the techniques that I just described helps me make the language less strange. And the more the language becomes familiar, less strange, this is sort of this gradual process of getting used to it. Listening, reading, going through some words and phrases. And typically, I prefer to review my words and phrases just after I encountered them in a context, because I do find that the sort of meaning or definition divorced from any context is less meaningful. So I don't know if that makes sense. I'm sorry that I'm just using these still shots. If I can figure out technically how to record myself actually doing it on our website, I will do that if there is interest. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.